Hello, I'm John Brink, and we are podcasting on the Brink from British Columbia, Canada, in the town, the capital of Northern British Columbia, Prince George. Today we have a very special guest. His name is Marty Strong. He's an entrepreneur, an author, a very popular speaker, as well as a retired Navy SEAL. Marty, welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me, John.
So, where are you located, Marty?
I'm in Virginia Beach, Virginia, on the east coast of the United States, about 200 miles or so south of Washington, D.C.
Oh, what's the weather like?
It's been overcast all day today, but hey, it's the beach, so it's
Yeah.
okay.
So, you have a very, very interesting bio, Marty. So, tell us a little bit about it, starting wherever you think is most appropriate. What really comes to mind is you're a retired Navy SEAL as a combat decorated Navy SEAL. Tell us a little bit about what that is and what it means, and how long were you active in the Navy?
So I joined when I was 17 years old, and I started out as an enlisted SEAL for about 10 years, and then I got a undergraduate degree in business and applied for my commission and became an officer, still in the SEAL teams, and did 10 years as an officer. So all in, I did 20 years. Uh, the primary role that I played for about 12 of those 20 years was a leader of some sort of small units and eventually some larger units.
And then when did you retire?
So I retired in 1996, and I went right into working with the financial services industry. 2 years with a company in Baltimore, and then I was recruited by United Bank of Switzerland to be a portfolio manager. So I ended up being a portfolio manager focusing on high net worth individuals, and did that full time for about 8 years all in before going into corporate leadership and executive management.
Always located in the United States?
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
Eastern Seaboard primarily?
My SEAL time was 16 of the years was on the Eastern Seaboard, and 4 of it was in California and San Diego.
Right. And then, so the business side, you became, you obviously had a very, very strong background with the Navy SEAL. It taught you a lot of things, from the time you were 17 years old. Was there always, with you, leaning towards the ambition or the thoughts of becoming active in business or entrepreneurship or becoming a leader?
So the kind of the misnomer, I call it the caricature of whether it's Navy SEALs or any special operations unit, is that it's a risk-taking unit led by risk takers that are just kind of throwing caution to the wind, and they're going out there and putting their lives on the lines and doing all these Mission Impossible tasks. Except the reality of it is, and I don't care if it's the United States or any country, because I've worked with probably 20 or 30 different special operations units around the world. The reality is that they're handpicked and they're selected for creativity, for psychological resilience, for adaptability, and for the ability to work as a team. So they're not focused on themselves. There's a lot of effort and energy driven towards everybody becoming better as a team, the whole unit becoming stronger as a team, and all the tasks are looked at kind of a fresh look each and every time a job is handed to us, and that's where the creativity kicks in. So it's a different kind of leadership than the standard military stereotype. And to be a good leader in those kinds of units, you have to have a little humility and be willing to just sit back and let the pot bubble a little bit, let everybody throw in all their different thoughts and everything. And at some point, you have to wrap it up and get the job done. But if you have the patience to do that, if you have the maturity to do that, you end up with a much better solution, which means you end up executing and performing much better than your peers and that starts to mark you out as a different kind of leader and a better leader.
And it lays the foundation then for what followed in your life, right?
It does. So I learned a lot. Every time you learn something new, every time you bump into a new challenge, you have two kind of, I guess, ways of looking at it. And I talk about this a lot in my books, but if you approach it with intellectual humility, you tend to listen, learn, and absorb and become more curious about the things you don't understand and don't know. Now, the opposite side of that is you know it all, you've got the football plays, you've done it before, you're just going to apply what you did in the past and you're going to apply it to the new challenge, whatever. And you might be right once or twice in a row, but then suddenly the world changed, things twist, the assumptions that you used in the past are no longer the assumptions going forward, and you fall flat on your face. So, and I did. I mean, I watched other people do it, I did it, and I saw, okay, what I need to do is approach these things as an open-minded leader and develop kind of a taste and an appetite for curiosity and kind of odd inputs and injects from different sources, not just kind of breathe my own air and listen to the people reporting to me. And I've been able to take all of those lessons learned and apply them to business. I applied them to looking at the markets and managing stocks and working with high net worth investors, and eventually in corporate America in managing companies. So I didn't think at the time it was something that was going to be transferable. I wasn't really focused on it. I thought I'd be in the Navy forever. I liked the job, but I got beat up pretty well. I got 80% disability by the time I was at 20 years. So I was a little bit slower than I should have been, and I knew I wasn't going to be able to do the job anymore. So I bowed out and retired. And management and business seemed to be the way to go.
So where did you get beat up from? Training, or were you in combat, or was it mainly because Navy SEALs is not necessarily a cozy environment, meaning physically, it kind of stretches you to the maximum most of the times, I presume?
Yeah, you're right. And we push to the edge physically and mentally. And we do that by putting ourselves in really crazy environments, mountains and deserts and swamps and underwater at night, sometimes in very cold environments. And we do that because we have to test what we can accomplish and what our limits are, if there's any limits, so that when the time comes to actually do a job, we know what we can and can't accomplish. So all of my injuries, all of my disability, all came from parachute jumps and sliding down ropes out of helicopters. And I got shot with an expended round one time in the leg. But I was never hurt in combat. I did 36 combat missions. I was the guy in charge. And luckily, neither myself or my men were injured or shot. And it's ironic in a way if you think about it. But again, it goes kind of against the grain of what everybody thinks is happening, and that is that all the injuries and all the pain and everything is all happening only on the battlefield. And actually, we're pushing so hard off the battlefield that oftentimes when you get into combat, that seems much simpler and smoother than practicing for it.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear this, and especially the Navy SEALs are special. Just give you just a little bit of my background. I was born in 1940. That makes me, I'm in my 83rd year, and when I was somewhat comparison a little bit, I was born in Holland, and obviously grew up during the Second World War. Remember quite a bit of it. In fact, still have been affected by PTSD, the inner child, and other things that even kids get exposed to in their younger years that will stay with them for a long time in their life. Hunger, anxiety, war settings. And then for me, when I was 17, Holland had a draft, not anymore, but then they did. And so I went into the Air Force Special Forces when I was 18 for about 2 years and 4 months. nothing like the Navy SEALs, but it was. I have a fairly good appreciation of having live bullets being shot over your head, and in the training and being in cold water and all the other things, even by us during that period as a draft soldier. It gave me experiences that were helpful to me probably in the rest of my life, especially when you're 18, 17, 18, when you think you know it all. If they put you in a big room with 40 other guys that think they know it all as well, and you get up at 4:30 in the morning and being yelled at and being pushed to the absolute limits of what you have available, it's a whole different experience. And I was not obviously drafted and then we went to war, but we came close to it. It was the time that Indonesia captured Dutch New Guinea, and we were ready to go there. Fortunately, we didn't. They just said, forget it, not worth it or whatever. And so that didn't happen. But I have some appreciation for being in that setting, but I was there only for 2 years and 4 months, but it gave me a good appreciation at a very, very young age.
It sounds like both a bad experience, but then a good experience later on.
Correct.
And they both, like Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning. He shows that there are, even in the worst of circumstances, you still end up learning something about yourself and human nature. So, I mean, you have to look at the upside, because you can't change your circumstances in the moment, right? No,
exactly. And that then becomes quite an experience. So I still remember when we were liberated by the Canadian Army on April the 12th, 1945, and it was something that had an immense impact on me, that I knew from that point forward I would go to Canada, not if but when. And I tried to go before I was drafted into the Air Force, but my parents wouldn't let me, and obviously went into the Air Force. But then left Holland when I was 24 years old, and with a dream of two dreams, actually. The one dream was to go to Canada. The other dream was to build my own lumber company. My dad managed a small lumber company. My grandfather was a master carpenter. And, so my dream was to go to Canada, British Columbia, that's all the timber is, and build my own lumber company. And start with nothing. I took $150 when I left Amsterdam, one suitcase, 3 books, and 2 sets of clothes, and couldn't speak the language, didn't know a soul, and didn't have a job. When I arrived in Prince George, I had $25.47. But what I did have was the most important one, is attitude, avoid the negative, stay positive, passion, and work ethic. And if you follow that, success will follow. And so that's what I did. I started, came here, came off the bus, had $25.47, and started as a clean-up man in a lumber mill here, and then my career went forward from there to where today we have 3 different lumber companies and a number of other companies, and I have experience throughout managing companies and being part of associations and organizations. I've always been very involved in being part of the community, and culture has been always very much part of my life as it was in Holland. And I love North America, I love Canada and British Columbia. I'm still very, very active in the lumber industry, and do a lot of my business actually in the United States.
Well, that's a great story. Congratulations, by the way. That's very inspiring.
Yes, the other part that was very important to me as well, Marty, is that I was not overly successful academically. I failed grade 3, and I failed grade 7 3 times, and so, the I didn't feel very good about that about myself. I thought I had failed. That was also an additional reason as to start all over again here in Canada with nothing. It took me until I was. Oh, the other thing that we both have in common is I'm also an author, and I've written 3 books and working on 2 other ones that come out in June and September next year. The one that I did is against all odds. And it's not about John, hurrah, hurrah, how successful he is or was, but it's about, in spite of it all, going through all the ups and downs, staying the course, precisely what I said before, is, never give up, stay positive, and, and so it took me 80 years to live it, 20 years to think about it, 2 years to write it. I'm not, amazingly, even with the background that I have, I'm a very good writer, and in spite of it. And then the other thing that happened to me is that when I was here in Canada already, in British Columbia, and I was quite successful, everybody said, "Oh, you're so successful," and I didn't feel that way. And I still thought I had not, I had failed really. And then one day I walked into a store, picked up a book, and the book said, "Driven to Distraction." I still don't know why I picked it up, and I looked at it, and it was writing about ADHD. I had never heard of ADHD. And the more I saw of the book, as I was standing there in the store looking at it, and I went through it and through it, finally the guy that owned the store said, "Are we going to buy it?" Or not quite, but more or less. And so I did buy it, and I said, "Oh my God, that's me." So I bought the book, and I wrote into it in English, in Dutch, because I was ashamed of it. Now I finally know who I am. And so, but I was ashamed of that, because the stigma against it is a mental illness, right? Potentially. And so it took me 5 years before I went to my doc that delivered our 2 daughters and was a friend. And he said to me, "John, why are you here?" I said, "I think I got ADHD." So we kind of looked at it together, and then, I did. And there's no question about that. So that took me quite a number of years, until about 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago, 5 years, 6 years probably ago, that I became more public about it. I felt that for me, it was a superpower. It allows me to do a lot more things virtually all at the same time. I can set some things aside, focus on the things that are important to me. And then I started speaking about it more, and then I felt I had an obligation to write about it. So I did. My second book that I did is ADHD Unlocked. And I've written it in such a way that you can pick up the book, start reading anywhere, and it is for the ADHD mind. The book was important to me because the more over those years that I knew I was ADHD, the more I got to know about it. It was probably considered to be 8% of the population maybe is affected by ADHD. I believe it's much more like 20%, if not more. And at the same time, I believe that the book is also important, not only my book, other books that are available, but the whole idea about ADHD, I believe, also affects people that are affected by trauma or slow learners, and that virtually anybody in the world today will be encountering people with ADHD, either in the family, their friends, or the widest circle of people they work with. To know what the ADHD mind, how they interact, is somewhat different than most other people. It's important to read about it and to understand them. That's why I wrote it, and that's why in a lot of presentations that I do, I talk about it. So
I like the idea that you made it a superpower, though.
I made it a super. It is a superpower.
That's back to the first word on your plaque.
Yeah.
Attitude.
Attitude.
It's it is what you make of it, and yeah, that's great.
I do. I show you one more book, Marty, and then I like to hear about you as well, about that. So the other one that is precisely to what you were saying is that I find that I heard something last week or so, and a comment that came from one of the news channels in the United States, actually, that they said that 70% of people that are working don't like their jobs. And probably 75% of the ones that don't like it are looking for another job. I believe that well may be the case, and it's very troubling. So I wrote this book that came out last July, Finding Your Passion, Living the Dream. And I believe that it's very important I did to a certain extent, but still are doing this, that still finding more things that I enjoy to do, and even what I've been doing in the lumber industry and some of the other businesses. If somebody asked me, so John, are you living the passion? I said, and are you living the dream? I sure am. Every day to me is a beautiful day, and I'm active. I get up usually at 5:30 in the morning, and I always think I'm late. Now, the other part that you may find interesting is that I always make my bed before I leave. I do it precisely like I used to do it in the Air Force. That's one of the things left over, one of the ones that is obvious, but, and then, that kind of to me is, I love life. I love doing what I'm doing. I'm very active. And then in a lot of areas where I've been successful, it was because of ADHD. And it is.
And there you go. Congratulations on the books, too. That's quite an accomplishment all by itself.
Yeah. Now, you've been writing as well. Tell us about...
I have. But
the one
before
that
I say that, I just want to let you know that I have been to Holland many, many, many times, working with the Vrome Korpset, which is the Dutch Marine naval commandos, which are kind of like their SEALs, and then usually every weekend hanging around Rembrandtsplatz and having a good time. So I've been to Holland multiple times.
Yeah, I love Holland, but I'm a Canadian now, but I still like going back there, so yeah.
Yeah, so I do. I write books.
Yeah, Be Nimble is the one that is about how the creative Navy SEAL mindset wins. Tell us about that, Marty.
Sure.
What made you write books to start with? Were you a natural writer? Is this something that you always liked?
I've always been a real aggressive reader. My mom kind of taught me how to read. My dad taught me how to study. My dad made me read technical books, religious books, books of philosophy, Spinoza, all kinds of different people that, I was going through middle school and high school. And between the two of them, I ended up loving novels for fun and the idea that I could learn anything I wanted to just because I could get a hold of a book and learn about whatever was in the book.
Right.
So I became a self-learner, and I really appreciated both styles of writing and the impact both types of fiction and nonfiction had on people. I was a decent writer, I think, because I was such a big reader, and I've heard that in other books on writing that you have to read a lot to understand, and eventually it becomes natural to you. You know when you write a sentence it doesn't work because you've read so many sentences, right? Um, I was a writer in the military. I had a knack for it. If you show a knack for something, everybody starts loading you up with jobs, whatever it is. Um, so I started writing more and more and more, and the more you write, the more you're being critiqued and mentored and coached. And by the time I became an officer, I was a really good writer in the military style, which is very stilted and very rigid. But I knew how to write. I knew how to organize my thoughts. I became a writer for the admiral in charge of all the SEALs, writing thought pieces and 1-2 page strategic documents because I could conceive in my mind, kind of storyboard out some real basic steps about the future. And for some reason, that was a knack that a lot of other officers much more senior to me didn't have. So again, the more I wrote like that, the more they asked me to write. Next thing you know, I'm writing things that are not stilted. They're more about vision and about strategy and the art of the possible. So when I decided to write originally after I was out of the military, I started writing fiction. So I have 9 published novels, and I did all those novels before I decided to write Be Nimble. And I think one, I didn't have a fear of the discipline of writing. Like you, I get up about 5 o'clock, make coffee. My dog gets up with me. I feed the dog, and I'm in front of the computer by 5:30. I usually do all my writing in that first hour from 5:30 to 6:30. And it took a while, but after a couple of months in the very first novel, it became a habit, and I started to get comfortable with it. And I just started writing more and more and more books. All my novels, all the proceeds go to the SEAL Veterans Foundation. Partly because when I wrote the first book, I said, I think I'll just donate all the proceeds to the SEAL Veterans Foundation, having no idea I was going to write 8 more.
Who are they, Marty?
The SEAL Veterans Foundation is an organization that helps um, SEALs and people in the Navy Special Operations community, which are people that are involved in high-speed boats and a lot of other things,
Right.
that have PTSD and traumatic brain injury, and
Okay.
they help the kids of SEALs that have been killed in combat
Right.
and or through accidents with scholarships. And so it's a really good organization. And my money, I have it all funneled towards the program that focuses on PTSD and traumatic brain injury. But that was kind of a fun thing to do, and it was cathartic for me
Right.
because being a CEO now for 15 years, yeah, once the sun came up, I had to go and answer the mail and talk to people and deal with lawyers and HR people and all that. So that was fun. But when I was doing lots of coaching and lots of mentoring without it being a business, just lots of business owners and executives. I'd given speeches off and on over the years, all free. And one day I decided, okay, what do I want to do when I'm done being a CEO? And I thought, well, what I want to do is I want to be creative, and I want to continue to write, and I want to be able to do paid public speaking, and I want to consult, mostly with strategy and kind of high-end leadership challenges. And how do you do that? So I did a little research. First thing you got to do is you have to have some credibility. So I said, okay, I got to write a book. And as you know, you sit down and you wonder, okay, what do I want to write about? Who's going to really read this? And once you figure out who your audience is, then the rest of it kind of happens, right? So
Yeah.
I did it in a very narrative style. It's like everybody that reads my book says it's like they're sitting across from me doing a one-on-one mentoring session. So
You tell
it's not a
stories.
textbook. I do. I have business examples. I have some SEAL examples that make sense. The point of it, though, after 28 years leading businesses, I've learned a lot. Some of it conveys from the military experience and the SEALs. Not all of it, but some does. The resilience, the attitude. The SEALs would say if you have a problem in front of you, you sit back and you say, okay, it's like a wall. I can crawl under it. I can go to the left around it, I can go to the right around it, I can crawl over the top of it, or I can blow the thing up. But there's so many different options. I'm not going to just sit here and say I got a wall in front of me and stop forward
No.
momentum.
No.
You work the problem, right? So those are the kinds of lessons that do convey, and the way leaders treat SEALs in commercial business, they don't necessarily treat their people the same way, like teammates and people to be invested in. Because in the military, when the phone rings and it's time to go to war, if you haven't been training everybody, including all the new guys, that's who's going with you too. So,
Exactly.
you're in a constant state of preparing everybody to the highest level standard of training and preparedness, so that when that phone rings, you've got your best foot forward. And in business, you can have the same approach. So that's essentially what Be Nimble was about. Uh, More about early stage, and that's what it started, but early stage businesses, companies going through mergers, acquisitions, where there's a lot of challenges about redesigning organizations and managing talent and shifting internal resources and mission and target. Um, Kind of being on your toes, being agile and nimble, and how you can do it and not be afraid of it, and learn how to do it well.
It's interesting that you say that. If I hear you speaking about it, is that I still feel, even myself today, that the foundation of who I am and what I've become, being still quite successful in business and a number of other things, the foundation still lies in Holland, parts being brought up in a war setting, for one, but I tell a lot of people, and I speak about it quite frequently, especially around Rememberings Day. I've done that for the last 10 years, talk to different schools in not only this area, but throughout the province, usually up to 4 different schools, and the young people there. What does it mean, the 2 minutes of silence? Why is it important to remember it? And what really happened, and what it meant from somebody like me that was there even at my age, being 5 years old in 1945. The other part that was important about it to me is that what laid the foundation for me is what followed the war. This is, and as we see now in the Ukraine and other places, but Ukraine in particular, the war is not the war and now the war is over and everything is back to normal. No, it isn't. What follows is very, very difficult times for people to again establish some form of stability again in their lives. Like in our family, my mom had 3 kids. They were all 1 year apart. I was the youngest, and my sister 1 year old, brother 2 years older. And my dad was, in April of 1945, he was drafted into the Dutch army just before the Germans invaded Holland, and with their blitzkrieg. And the last time they saw him was in the bombing of Rotterdam. And as you likely know from, they bombed the whole center of Rotterdam, and a lot of people did not survive, thousands and thousands of people. And for the family, they didn't know if he was dead or alive until after the war. And fortunately he came back, but PTSD affected him for the rest of his life. And those were difficult times. And coming back to the earlier part is that I find even now my management style still has a foundation of structure from my period in the Air Force and being in the forces, and part of my life is still very much that foundation that always will stay with me and has made me, I believe I'm very good at what I do, and in managing, and then obviously what came much later is that, unfortunately for me, it took me till I was 57 until I realized the ADHD had affected me during the period. I was not very good in school, obviously, and but it took me a long time to kind of fully realize that. But then since that time, I became a writer. I'm a professional speaker, and I love doing what I'm doing. And and even at 83, I'm a bodybuilder. I've been competing in 2017, 2018. Something triggered me that I have to start doing something physically, not just thinking about going to the gym, or do it, make the commitment at year end, and then 2 weeks later say, well, I got no time. So that I knew I had to do this, and I got a bit of a scare, nearly died, and I went to the gym, and then became very serious about it, used a trainer, and then after about 7 years of training, somebody said to me, have you ever thought about competing? And I said, me? And so then I started looking at training, at competing, and I became here second competing, became second bodybuilding, and third in physique, then qualified for the provincials, again third in physique, second in bodybuilding, then became a candidate for the nationals and the Arnolds, bodybuilding and physique, and then COVID came, and now even at 83, I'm still again getting ready to compete again in 2024, getting back to the Arnolds. And I'm supposedly the oldest competitive bodybuilder in North America. How about that one? So
that's fantastic. But I mean, so most people would see you doing that, and because most people would say, chill out, relax, stretch out your longevity by just not taking a whole lot of physical risks. Watch out, you're going to break your hip, all that kind of stuff. That's incredible. I'm 65, and when I was 54, I had the same kind of impulse. I decided to, I was in martial arts when I was younger, and I decided, okay, I'm going to do something I haven't done before. I'm going to kind of get out of my comfort zone. Because when you're in charge, everybody kind of tells you what you want to hear, and there's not a whole lot of risk to anybody telling you anything you don't want to hear.
right.
And I thought, all right. So I have a friend, a real close friend, who had a martial arts school, and he was a SEAL for 8 years at one point. And I said, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. I'd like to get the equivalent of a black belt in Muay Thai, Thai boxing. And he looks at me and goes, what are you talking about? I mean, that's brutal. You don't want to start eating knees and elbows and everything. And I said, I just want to do something that challenges me and forces me to work out for a reason other than just working out.
Exactly.
And so he goes, okay. And so he gives me one of his trainers who had 100 professional fights, who'd been in one of the only Americans to ever win the King's Cup in Thailand, which is a single elimination tournament with thousands of competitors.
Wow.
And the guy says, okay, what do you want to do? And I told him. He said, all right. So he started doing private lessons with me. 3.5 years later, I finally accomplished it. But for the first 13 months, all I did was eat punches.
Yeah.
I never laid a glove on this guy. I mean,
No.
he had a 6-inch reach on me. He was built for that stuff. He had really long legs, and he would do a 60-minute, 3-minute rounds, 40-second rest in between rounds, like he was training a fighter. Because I told him, train me like a fighter. Don't train me like I'm just somebody coming in off the street that just wants to throw some punches. And man, I'll tell you what, my wife she would start crying sometimes when she'd see all the bruises all over my body. She goes, why are you doing this to yourself? And I said, well, it's exactly what I wanted to accomplish.
Yeah.
After the first time I got hit, I realized I was slow. My feet were dumb. I said I'd lost all my abilities. I lost everything, my agility, everything, and I wanted to get it all back. So, yeah. And everybody, what are you doing this for?
Yeah.
Why are you doing this? And my kids, I have 5 kids. What are you doing, Dad? What are you doing this for? So, and okay, then you get there, then what? So, and I've run marathons and stuff like that, but man, I never even thought of the physique competition. Probably make my wife happy if I started going after that. if I was successful.
At, at, you see, and at the time, I was nearly 70 already, and and then when I first started competing here, is bodybuilding and physique. So a lot of people know me in the area here. So there were probably 300 people in the audience. I knew all of them, and I'm in my little skimpy little outfit standing there, and but I did it, and then I qualified for the provincial, then for the nationals, and I've done it now. I'm going to do it again, and and then I want to live like I'm going to be 120. And that's the plan.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I'm doing, Marty, you will like, is that I'm writing another book. I said to you earlier, is that I'm writing it right now. Should come out next June. Is living young, dying old, and it has everything to do with not years, but the quality of life, and
Yeah, that's great.
and looking at the areas, because sometimes it sounds very complicated and difficult to understand, and I want to write it from somebody that's living it. And I'm very lucky. My wife is very health oriented. She is a vegan. I'm probably 80-20, and but she is very proactive and healthy living, and so we doing that, and but then I want to write a book about it, so I'll send you a copy of it once it comes out.
That'd be great.
I'll send you copies of these ones too, actually. Yeah.
Well, if you send me your address, I'll send you copies of mine. My second book, Be Visionary, that came out this year. It's about trying to shake people free of their static kind of focus on the past and what's going to happen tomorrow. Get their nose and their eyes up to the horizon. It's about being aspirational. It's about taking a vision, either a life strategy or a business strategy, organizational strategy, and then executing what you have to do, the steps, however long it takes. Anticipating obstacles, threats, but also seizing opportunities. And the whole book's about that, because it's something when I talk to people, especially business owners or leaders, CEOs, they don't teach it in school. They don't teach it in college. They don't teach it to junior managers. One day you're kind of up at a level where you're in charge of a big business division or even a company, and somebody looks at you and says, "Do it. Do the strategy thing. What's your big plan for the future?" And they just stare back.
Exactly.
Because nobody's ever taught them that. All they've taught them
No.
how to do is to execute, the plan for tomorrow. And so focuses on that as a way of shaking people free of their stasis, their focus on, what they are and they're never going to be anything else. The organization's never going to be any different. And, in the SEALs, in the military in general, they have this thing called "keep your head on a swivel." It's basically, if you keep looking forward, somebody's going to shoot you in the back.
Right.
You have to kind of look 360 degrees, and it's the same application in life or in business. You should be aware, conscious, and be thinking and absorbing information and data from every location and pushing it out 24 months, 36 months,
Correct.
48 months. What do you want to be? How do you want to feel? Where do you want your family to be? Where do you want, and once you start doing that, you start to build a plan, and then all of a sudden you have a way to execute and get there.
And it becomes a way of life then, of doing that, right? Of that awareness of looking forward, looking back, looking sideways, seeing opportunity, and being willing. But I always find is, and I'm quite involved on the leadership side as well. I always have been in associations and groups, but also from a corporate perspective. I've always been very much, I'm the sole owner of my companies, we are involved in lumber is my primary silo, but also warehousing and logistics and real estate, both residential, commercial, and industrial. And we employ about 400 people in that area. So we're a fair-sized, mid-sized company, and I love it. And 5 years from now, we should be double the size from where we are now. And I always kind of look forward and look for opportunity, The other thing that is exciting to me is that the writing is something relatively new to what I've been doing. I hope to write one book per year, and so far, that's what I'm doing. And then the other part, Marty, to me is where I see similarities between you and me, is that I was very fortunate through challenges and hardship that I have that solid foundation behind me that directly, indirectly, I'm always aware of. It's always be part of my life. I've been that laid that foundation, and it allows me to do these other things that I'm doing now. In addition to that, I'm relatively new, but the podcasting to me has been very interesting, and meeting individuals like you today, and some of the I do about 3 podcasts a week, about 15 a month, and I really enjoy it, and have met amazing individuals, and that have become friends, in fact, and that I meet again or meet through their associations. I find it amazing.
Well, you gotta give me your address, or if it's the address that set this thing up, and I'll send my address. There's a book exchange here, and we'll go 3 for 3, because my 3rd book is going to the publisher this Friday, so it'll be out. It'll be released probably around April or May next year, and it's all about creativity and innovation and the brain science. About it doesn't matter how old you are. Unless you have Alzheimer's or dementia, some actual clinical problem, the same 2 switches in the human brain that a 6-year-old has or a 12-year-old has, somebody who's 70 or 80 has. And one's a task focus switch, and the other one's, scientists call it the foraging or the exploration switch. And it's an ancient capability in the brain. One allows you to work on spear tips and being prepared, with shelter, and the other one gives you the risk-taking mechanism to go over the next hill to go find more food and a better place, for your family.
I love it.
If you had one and not the other, you just eat everything in the immediate vicinity and then die. So
yeah,
their exploration switch is it's dormant. Once you get pounded, it gets pounded out of you through schools and schooling, the way things are taught. It's rote memorization. Everything in school is a history lesson, so they're not teaching about anything future or forward-looking. Not teaching you how to think about the future, right?
Yeah.
And every institution, until you get your first job, is telling you, yeah, whatever, but you got to do what we tell you to do, learn what we tell you to learn, keep your ideas to yourself. And so basically that other switch just goes dormant.
Exactly.
And then you get into your first company, and they tell you the rules about where to park, what hours you can go to the coffee area, and what floors you can't go on, what you have to wear. 10 years later, all you do is task stuff. You can't even, and you think you can't do anything else, but it's a fallacy. You can.
I was fortunate in a way. People say to me sometimes now that now I know it was ADHD. Obviously, is saying, well, you feel very bad about that. You didn't go beyond grade 7, and I said I do, very much so. I should have stopped earlier. So. But,
hey, when I was managing high net worth guys, half of the guys that I managed were high school graduates, and they were multimillionaires. I mean, if you look at all the Jobs and Gates and Steve Case, who started AOL, those guys either dropped out of school, or barely finished, and look what they did.
And there are lots and lots of them. The other thing that I just want to quickly talk about is that you do the same as I do as well in regards to being a public speaker and a professional public speaker. Is how did you go into that? And let me tell you a little bit about my background, so that you can kind of already have the picture. Is that I was not didn't feel very good about myself. I felt I had been a failure in school, and as you know, in Holland, is that if you I always knew that if I wanted to have a family, obviously, and then get a good job, and then being able to buy a house, that meant I needed a good job. But then if I want a good job, then they say, okay, where are your diplomas? Well, I don't have any diplomas. So it was another reason for me to start over new again when I had my dream of going to Canada and the other one building my own lumber mill. But it also gave me the opportunity to start all over, to prove to me that I had the abilities. I didn't need to go to university. And I already was pretty good at what I was doing in Holland, but I felt I should start all over again. So I left with a suitcase, 2 sets of clothes, and 3 books. Which books, John? Well, I had, when I was 24, Management by Drucker in Dutch, Logical Thinking in Dutch, and then a book of Canada. Those were my 3 books that I had. And then coming off the bus here with no money and all of that kind of stuff. But I never kind of felt good about myself. But then something happened to me. I could communicate inside my mill, 3 or 4 people, but beyond that, I was not confident to have really conversations. Then somebody, my ex-sister-in-law, when it must have been 89, 88, 89, dragged me to, she said, go with me to Toastmasters. I said, well, what is it? You're familiar with Toastmasters, I'm sure. And I said, well, she said, okay, well, just sit in and just, I said, what are they doing? Well, they learning to have dialogue and speaking and all of that kind of stuff. And I said, are they going to ask me questions? She said, no. I said, because if they ask me questions, I'm not going. No, they don't. But in the middle of the meeting, somebody said, hey, John, tell us about you. And I said, oh, my God. Anyway, I'll never go back here. But I did. And I went there for 10 years. And as you already know, Toastmasters is an amazing organization, probably has 500,000 people throughout the world, mainly United States or North America, that are in classes all over. I think there's 6 clubs in Prince George alone, and they are all over the place, and that are actively taking Toastmasters. And I said it's the best organization to become a good communicator, even more importantly, to become a good listener and other things. But in any event, so I went there and, then gradually worked my way up. And as I said, probably as we speak, there are probably 400,000 or 500,000 people that are still actively involved around the world. And probably 5 million, 6, 7, 8, 9 million, maybe up to 10 million that at some point were part of Toastmasters. I would say that probably different levels where they say, okay, that's exactly what I need, or thank you very much. Others that stay the course like I did for 10 years and become a DTM or a distinguished Toastmasters. And probably less than 1% of the people that have been involved in it feel they want to go to that direction. It changed my life, and in terms of creating confidence, being improving my communication skills, thinking on your feet, and all the other things. And so since that time, I've been doing a lot of speaking. More recently, becoming a professional speaker.
Well, I didn't go the Toastmasters route. I've always been a storyteller, and in the SEAL teams, everybody has to, at some point, you're a trainer. You end up training guys in a classroom. I was very comfortable doing that. I was able to tell stories to kind of prove points, and that was entertaining and held people's interest. And eventually I went to the school where we screen all the SEALs to become SEALs. Did 2 years, got formal training as an instructor, and then lots and lots and lots and lots of practice, hours and hours and hours over 2 years of standing in front of hundreds of people trying to do the same thing. Later, when I came back and I had that same job where I was writing for that admiral, there was a I guess just the way my brain works, I was very comfortable thinking on my feet, but looking like I was very comfortable. So that's of great value when you're having senior people fire questions at you. And so they decided to make me a briefing officer, and I would go and brief guys like Colin Powell when he was the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, Sam Nunn, who was in the Senate Armed Forces Committee, I think he was the chairman, um, Dick Cheney when he was the Secretary of Defense of the United States. So these are guys, the four-star in charge of U.S. Special Operations Command, and I would go and be the presenting officer. And I was a little junior for that role, and they were always a little surprised when they saw a lieutenant walk up there. But I was good at explaining concepts in believable ways that were clear. And then if somebody shot a question at me, I was very comfortable in the moment, just kind of giving a half smile and then giving a very good answer that was also conceptual and easy to understand. I didn't get rattled. So I ended up like with the writing, the more I did it, the better I did it, the more they made me do it, the more they made me do it, the better I got, kind of on and on. And when I got into financial services, I basically grew my business initially for the first 2 years doing seminars because that was a skill set I understood. And I did some public speaking, just not being paid, but I would do it for different groups when I was in the financial services business. But professionally, it started. I had someone come up to me after a speech in front of a bunch of engineers. I think it was an engineering organization that I did just as a favor for somebody. And a guy comes up and goes, "Hey, I really want you to speak to our organization. I think, what's your fee?" And I'm like, "Huh?" I had no idea. I just kind of looked at it and went, "Well, tell me what you want me to do and when you want to do it and all that, and then I'll think about a fee." And then I had to go and start studying how do you charge and what do you charge, and because and I had been speaking at that point. I was 42 years old or something like that, and I've been speaking forever. It seemed like never made anybody pay for it. So
No.
The cool thing now is through things like podcasts, my books, and they all kind of feed off each other. I get consulting work. A lot of times the companies that I do consulting work for want me to go to an annual thing and give a big speech, keynote or whatever. And up till now, it's been kind of related to my book. So it's about leadership and strategic thinking and all that. But I tell you what, this is kind of where Toastmasters might have helped. I freaked out in January this year. I got a request. I mean, it was an immediate request. I had to commit within a couple of days. They wanted me bad. They'd read my books, read some of my articles, and it was in Atlanta at the Atlanta Hilton. And the thing I freaked out about is they wanted it to be a motivational speech. And it had to be 90 minutes long. It was a keynote, and it was after dinner. And I'd never done a on purpose motivational speech. As you know, in training for speaking, you learn all kinds of different categories and what you're trying to accomplish, and there's different approaches and all that. But when you're up there and you're kind of the subject matter expert in your own books, it's pretty easy. I just looked at my wife before I signed the contract, and I said, "This is like being a stand-up comedian and being told you have to be funny for 90 minutes." I said,
Exactly.
How can I be inspirational and motivational for 90 minutes? And she goes, you just be you. You're always like that. And I said, "No, I'm not." She goes, "Yeah, you are. Believe it or not. Maybe you didn't do it on purpose." And I sweat that thing right up until it was done. 1,700 people. And until the moment it was over and I walked off, and the people that hired me came up and they were just thrilled to death and they were hugging me and everything. Up until that moment, I wasn't sure I was gonna succeed or not.
Yeah.
So it just shows you, you have something to learn at every age. There's always a way to improve what you're doing. And so now I'm not afraid of doing a motivational speech, but that's kind of what I'm doing. And I'm taking them when I can based on my day schedule as a CEO. And I have a lot of fun with it.
I feel the same, Marty, but I needed Toastmasters to deal with the issues of ADHD that I didn't even know about then until 7 years into Toastmasters. I found out I'm ADHD. Kind of that explained some of the things that I had issues with. I kind of failed. So but then it triggered something that, but I believe you and me have in common. I'm a storyteller, and I'm very good at it, so, and I love it. That's what I do in my books. Even, and I've been very active, the same as you were, speaking in all kinds of different settings, and and I love doing it, and even to the point that I get the same question now. It's saying, I think we got today or a couple of days ago a request, 500-600 people. I have to do it, and saying, "What's your fee?" And I said to Scott, I'm going to have to give some thought to that. The likelihood is I'm not going to charge them because it's a group that I feel very strongly about it. The other part about it that you may find interesting is that as we finish tonight with you and me, I'm doing a presentation to the College of New Caledonia here, 40 students that at least 40 students that are looking for a motivational speech. And so I will do that, I think at 6:30 for about an hour, and then question and answers, I think, after that. So, and I love it, so, and I be doing more and more of that all the time as my books get out there. But, but Toastmasters probably taught me more than anything is to give me confidence, for one. And then the other part, it's a lot of people say to me, well, Toastmasters teaches you how to speak and how to do presentations. That's not the most important one. The most important one is it teaches you to listen. And then be coherent in terms of answering questions like, but you were saying, if there are Q&As, I like that because it allows me to, again, think on my feet, and that's what I do. I've been doing that my whole life, so it comes natural to me, and so I love that, so.
I love Q&A, and that thing in Atlanta, they didn't have any Q&A. It was open 90 minutes, close, off the stage. And then they brought me back for an hour a little bit later with just the senior management. It was about 600 people, whatever. And they had a moderator with me on the stage. And that was real comfortable. I was just like this. We were just asking me questions, and I would state my opinion and everything. All the pressure was off. I was just being me. But I think it's good. When you prepare to write, you have to organize your thoughts and organize your philosophy of life and business and everything. When you prepare to give a speech and get in front of people, you do the same thing. And it's a constant exercise of kind of realignment and alignment and focus. And it helps kind of crystallize what you are and what you think about. And it simplifies it a lot of times. The more you think about it and the more you do that, you start to become so clear that you don't really have to think so much about the next speech because you know what your main points are, you know what your core philosophy is.
And the other part about it, Marty, is that, I've done about, I think you are number 165 podcast that I've done. And then before that, we did, before COVID, we did something like that, but not quite podcasting. But, so the more you do, the more comfortable you become with it. I can feel that with you. For me, it's easy to interact with you, but I was not and you have quite the credentials, you do, but I did not feel anxiety of meeting with you or talking to you. I felt comfortable with you. Last week, I had a podcast that maybe you're familiar with them as well. A fellow, I forget his last name now, but one of the CEOs of Amazon. Very interesting podcast. It's always been a company that has been of interest to me, Jeff Bezos and what he has done. The other one that I did was amazing is, lady that climbed the second highest mountains in 7 continents. What was the name?
Must have been
Scott?
interesting.
Scott?
Jen Drummond.
Yeah, Jen Drummond. Yeah, but very, very interesting. Amazing lady. Yeah, so, but the point that I'm making is that we podcasting virtual, and we podcasting as you do around the world. I've had people from Sweden, from Switzerland, from Holland, from France, from Spain, from South America, Panama last week. Somebody it's amazing to me, and I really love it and look forward to them.
Well, I've had fun. Maybe you'll have me back next year when my book comes out. We can talk about your new book. And
I like that, Marty. Anything else that comes to mind before we say goodbye?
no, I think when we're done here, I'm going to ponder becoming a physique fitness athlete or something, and see if I can up my game. No, I really appreciate it. It's been very interesting and fun.
Okay, and I'm going to send you copies of the books. Scott is he'll interact with you and making sure we have the right address, and then we go from there.
All right, sounds good. And I'll have my 2 coming your way.
Marty, it was a privilege, and I really enjoyed our podcast, and let's make sure we stay in touch.
All right, John. I really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Marty. Take care.
Take care.